can go from there.
Yep.
Sorry, I forgot to ask if anyone has any issues in recording. Yeah.
If you want, I can do the share.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yep.
Yep. All right, let's see if I can do this. There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Do we have a quorum of people? Looks like it. We've got a few. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for attending. This is April. So this is our April meetup. Data Engineering Melbourne meets up on the last Thursday of each month. So keep an eye out for that in the calendars and on meetup.com, and you'll see what's coming up next for our talks and presentations. Today we've got Susan, who is a fabulous presenter and has a YouTube channel, and I'm sure we'll be able to share lots of links, stuff to see and hear more about Susan that we can post on the Meetup group. After Susan's talk, we'll do the community marketplace, which is an opportunity we have for people to tell us a little bit about things that you're doing in the community, and that is things like a project you might be working on, a particular technology you're developing or contributing to, as well as things if people are looking for work opportunities. Then feel free to share 60 seconds about what you're looking for and a bit about yourself, and people that might be looking for staff and people to come and help with their data engineering projects. It's a great opportunity to share a little bit about what the opportunity is and the sort of people that you're looking for, to try and help make some connections. And we'll do that after Susan's presentation. This is a bit about Susan, and we're really excited to have Susan come and join us today. What time is it for you, Susan?
It's 3:30 a.m. Woo!
Oh gosh, okay, very very early in the morning or late at night, depending on how.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether it's late at night or early in the morning yet.
Oh, we're very pleased to have you come and share with us, and looking
Thanks.
forward to hearing what you've got to tell us about dirty data, which is a problem I'm sure most of us have all come across and had to deal with at some point in our careers working with data. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Susan.
Great, thanks very much. Okay. So hopefully you can see my screen. So first of all, dangers of dirty data over this side of the world, for me anyway. So data doesn't quite roll off the tongue for me. So yeah, I'm going to talk you through it and give you some tricks on how you can spot it regardless of what tools you're using. But before all that,
when you think of superheroes, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Men in tights, women with superhuman strength, capes. Lots of superheroes wear capes, but only one wears a coat. A data coat. By day, she's Susan Walsh, but when dirty data rears its ugly head, she becomes the classification guru. What are the classification guru's superpowers? Consistency, organization, accuracy, and trust. With help from her good friend and trusty sidekick, the data whisperer. Tesco. The classification guru wages war against dirty data, fighting her sworn enemies, misclassification, duplicate, and the typonator. It's the classification guru's job to clean up the mean streets of Excel City.
That was bang out of order.
So, when you're in Excel hell, don't let dirty data get you down. Call the classification guru. When you think of...
it always does that. So that's a little bit about me and the kind of sense of tone that you'll get from this presentation. I'm not your average data person. As you can tell, this is my data den. I'm all about the sparkles. So what I'll do is I will start off by talking about my favourite subject, a little bit about myself. Then I'll go on to talk about what is dirty data, the importance of data quality, the consequences of dirty data on the organisation, wherever you're working or what you're working with, how you can ensure data accuracy, and then how to spot check your data. And we'll just do that in Excel. And then a little summary, and if you're really lucky, might be another video at the very end. So a little bit about me first. I didn't kind of choose data, I would say. Data chose me. I spent my early career working in sales, FMCG, large corporates, and had a dream of being a sales director. And then I realized that actually I didn't even like what I was doing. It wasn't really for me, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So where I live over here in the UK, I opened a shop. Beautiful women's clothes. It was a time before internet took off, but where I live is a really affluent area, and what I couldn't have anticipated was brand snobbery. So my clothes weren't expensive enough or high-end enough for the clientele in Guildford. So unfortunately that didn't really last very long. It was about 7 months, and then you know, racked up a ton of debt. I had so broke I couldn't even afford to go bankrupt. I had to save up, so I needed a job really quickly, and I found an ad online to work in for a spend analytics company doing some spend data classification. And I'd never done it before, but I thought, well, you know, I've worked in larger organizations, I kind of know what they're spending their money on. So started with them, found that I took to it really quickly. I was really good, I was really accurate, and more importantly, I found something I really enjoyed. And so I spent 5 years with Spend, which became Coupa, and then I, you know, was managing a team of 14 people. We were classifying, and I could see that there was a real opportunity to fix the raw data, but nobody was really addressing that. Everyone was focusing on the fancy dashboards, you know, and that's what companies were paying for. So I didn't have any connections in the procurement or data world. So I decided to set up the classification guru, and that's pretty much why I exist. And I'll literally be coming up for my 4th birthday in about a month's time. So yeah, I was definitely onto something. So I'm going to talk you through some things today, and it's going to be from a kind of spend data classification perspective. However, it's completely relevant to many types of data, and you know, it's there's some really fun examples in there of when data can be a bit wrong or not what you think it is. So first of all, let's talk about what is dirty data. You know, it can be different things to different people. So let's just define that. So in my world, I would say things like it's misspelt words. I have seen supplier names spelt wrong. So even like IBM as IMB, really obvious things. I have seen things like incorrect descriptions. The description does not match up with whatever the company is. So say it's a taxi company and the description says cleaning services. So I've seen things like that. I have seen missing codes, product codes, which causes all kinds of problems. I have seen lots and lots and lots of data in the wrong columns. And this is prevalent mostly in things like addresses. So you'll get address 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll have the whole address in one cell, and then other records will have it split over the 4 columns, but the postcode might be in the town column, and the numbers are all misformatted, and yeah, I'm sure you know it's not fun. And then there's things like no standard units of measure. So I worked with a client recently in Germany, and they had spelt liters about 4 or 5 different ways. You know, you've got the US version, the European version. I'm not sure which way you guys spell it in over there, but if you don't define those things, you end up with multiple versions of the same product. And do you abbreviate it? And if you do abbreviate it, well, is it going to be like LTR or just L? And are you going to have a space in between the number and the unit of measure, or are you going to have it together? Because that also causes problems. And then sometimes as well, currency issues, you might not realize that you're working in multiple currencies, and suddenly your numbers are through the roof and you can't figure out why. And specifically for me, sometimes the client hasn't told you and you have to figure it out yourself. Then there's formatting issues. So yeah, those numbers, phone numbers, if you've got multiple different countries in there, how are you going to do your plus and your leading numbers first? Are you going to have spaces, no spaces? Postcodes as well. I don't know if you guys have got postcodes or zip codes, but over here in the UK, it's like my postcode's GU1 space 4AJ. You might see no space in there, or you might see it, all different kinds of ways. And then finally, our old favorites, the duplicates, and I think they pretty much exist in every data set known to man. They are, mainly caused by a lot of the other issues that I've just spoken about. And sometimes it's just kind of laziness on people's parts. They haven't done as much as they could to find the record that already exists in the system. So, guess what? We'll just create a new one. Nobody will mind. And then suddenly you've got half the information in this record and half the information in that record. So it's not great. It's going to be a right pain in the butt for you to fix, and it's going to cause you a lot of stress. And in my world, that can be really interesting. So, for example, the first piece of dirty data that I'm going to share with you is LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, we all know LinkedIn. In fact, probably we all kind of met on that well-known social networking platform. Because the description here said restaurant, the person that was working for me classified it as a restaurant. So they hadn't looked at the name and the description in context. They'd only looked at the description. Now that could have been in a reference to a job ad or just an advertisement or some training. I mean, it could have been related to anything on LinkedIn. So it showed that context was really important. And when I asked him why he'd done that, he couldn't justify it to me, which is because I suspect he'd run some kind of script and just pulled the information from the description. And then sometimes it's just things that people misunderstand the description, or they go onto the website of the company and misunderstand what they do. So Thomson Reuters, if you go onto their website, it might look maybe like they do legal services, but it's legal publications. And in this case, it was conference costs. So you should always kind of use that as a guide. And then this one again, just basically someone not paying attention to detail. So, they're called thermal installation. Someone put it as thermal insulation. So it's just, having that taking that little bit of extra time. And then this is one of my favorites, but not the ultimate favorite, which I'll talk about next. This is joke technology. So this was for a charity based in the UK, and every time I Googled it, I just got party hats and fancy dress and all those kinds of things. And, it's got technology in the name. So logic was telling me it couldn't be that. I knew they were based in Germany. So I did a search in Germany and then found out that it was manufacturing components and supplies, which made more sense than fancy dress. And then finally, my favorite one, Tinder Corporation. So again, this was for this charity in the UK, and the description says additional data cabling. But of course, you look at Tinder Corporation and you think, no, that can't be right. Not a charity, like not even for advertising. No, that's got to be wrong. Well, as it turns out, there is actually a company in the UK called Tinder Corporation Limited who provide IT services. So it's a really great example of where we might assume that we know what something is, but by having all the columns and all the information, we can make the correct judgment by actually looking at everything in context. And of course, you know, that's me just pulling out a couple of lines, but actually, you know, when you're looking at rows and rows and rows and rows of data, it can be really hard to spot those things. So I'm going to take you through some tips and tricks in this presentation to help you pick out those things. Now, if you were classifying or working with data, things that you need to keep in mind would be things like looking at the vendor name and the description, or even if it's like product codes, you can, or manufacturer numbers, things like that, you can normally find some kind of pattern in there. So like certain types of, like say it's nuts and bolts, they might all start with the same kind of like number, which is like say 569 and then If you have all these listed and then one number is like 46, starts 461, that's a flag that maybe something isn't quite right. So looking at everything is really, really helpful. And then think about, you know, would the company you're working for, your client, would they use this product or service? Would they do or buy this thing, or would they have this kind of customer, or would they make this kind of product? Just always have that at the back of your mind. And then in classification specifically, values are really great. So, you know, you would think, you see a hotel and you would think instantly, oh, let's classify it as a hotel. But actually anything over say £5,000, dollars, whatever, is more likely to be venue hire than actually accommodation. So it's, you know, those things can really point you in the right direction. And then when you go on the website, does it match what your data set says? Because either your data set's wrong or you're looking at the wrong website. So good to keep those things in mind. And then, you know, anything new, especially if it's companies, always just double check on Google. Don't assume that the data you have is correct, because, you know what they say about assumptions. My God, it's so late/early in the morning, I can't speak properly. I might as well be drunk. So let me show you how it's not just like data classification where there's problems. Supplier names is also a problem. So if you've ever normalized any suppliers like IBM, IW.M, IBM Inc., IBM Limited to IBM, that's great, because you're getting a true picture of what's going on within that company, what you're spending with them, you know, what you're buying from them, what they're buying from you. But you have to be careful to not assume that you just know what the company is. So there's a couple of different companies here that looked the same: WW Grainger, Grainger Inc., and Grainger PLC. But actually, when you look a bit deeper, they're two separate companies. One is a maintenance MRO parts and nuts, bolts and screws in the US, and one's a house builder in the UK. So again, it's just using, don't just normalize on the supplier name, look at the descriptions as well and see if they can guide you. And when you are normalizing, keep in mind the following, you know, don't assume. Use the suffixes at the end of the supplier name. So I know, because I classify so much data for Australian things, that PTY, PTE tends to be the suffixes for Australian companies, Inc. in the US, Limited in the UK, SPZOO for Poland. So that can help guide you as well. And then where are they located? So those suffixes will help you that, and then you can start to do a bit of research. And just by putting that little bit of extra time in at the very beginning can save you so many hours of having to fix things at the other end. So that is dirty data, but what's the importance of it? Why should we bother about it? Well, firstly, you're going to save time fixing dirty data. It could be costly to rectify, and you might have to get someone like myself in to do it. it's going to affect decision-making processes, and it's going to impact all different departments within an organization. So it's not just procurement, it could be, you know, sales and marketing, it could be the production and the manufacturing of products, because if sales and marketing have decided to run a promotion but not told the rest of the business, then they might not have enough inventory, and then they might not have enough raw materials. So it can really impact. So having that right data is so important, you know, or putting an extra zero on the end of something, or not putting an extra zero on the end of something can have some pretty crazy consequences. And of course, dirty data makes our life more difficult, and who wants that? So what about the consequences of it? What actually happens on the other side of the data set? Because, you know, we might work with it and we might not see where it goes or where it ends up. Well, first of all, within reporting and decision making, you might not be able to make as many cost savings as you think as you actually could. Within procurement, you might not be able to negotiate the best supplier rates for what you're buying because you don't have the full picture. You might think you have more suppliers than you do. So I worked with a client recently and I normalized their suppliers down from 43,000 to 34,000. So they had multiple versions of the same things. So they were getting a whole different picture than what was actually going on. It can affect things like forecasting as well. You know, talked about, you know, you accidentally put into 0 on or take 1 off in manufacturing. That could cause a problem. In ordering the raw materials, that could cause an even bigger problem. Things like budgets, you know, if you're looking at a year's sales or something like that, decisions for the whole business are made on that information. So if it's not right, that's going to affect the whole organization's budget, staffing levels, all those kinds of things. But it's more than that, because it's also in the visualizations too. So here is a list of some unnormalized suppliers. These are the kind of usual suspects that I would see in a data set. So this is how a company would be looking at them right now. They can see that there's a few suppliers there, and maybe think the most they're spending is 75,000, or yeah, 75,000. But when I normalize those suppliers, guess what? There's only 4. And that 75,000 becomes 180,000. And that's a massive difference in spend with PwC. So you might want to be asking questions like, why are we spending that much with them? Why are we not using other suppliers? Or what did we get for that? Is that what we agreed? There could be hidden suppliers in there that you don't really notice, but when you normalize, because there's less suppliers, they stand out a bit more. So it could help with things like fraud, rogue spending. So, you know, when you look at the two together, it makes a huge difference, and it changes the picture of what's going on. And it's the same with classification. So this is a true story. I got a data set and IBM was in there, and there was some already classified data that the supplier had sent over. And some of it was classified as cleaning services. And we'll go on to automation and things later, but imagine if that cleaning services keeps getting automatically classified, and every month that number of spend, the value goes up and up and up. That's going to mislead the procurement team. They're going to think they're spending a hell of a lot more on cleaning than they actually are, and they're going to think they're spending less on IT. So by doing visualizations, it can really help to pull out anything that stands out. So in this case, yeah, we've got some facilities under IBM, and it's like, shouldn't really be there. So when we change that, you can see again, the picture changes. So, it visually has an impact on what you are looking at, your colleagues are looking at, the business is looking at. And it's the same with technology. So, data cleansing is pretty much often always neglected when it comes to implementing new systems. And I get called in quite a lot to fix it on the other end, and it always takes 2-3 times as long as before. Errors are only discovered post-implementation, and you could be way down the line by then, so it could be really troublesome. And then if you've got staff involved, they could lose faith in the data, they could be disengaged, they could claim it doesn't work, they don't trust it because it's wrong. And so when you do try to fix it, it's going to cost a lot of money to fix. You're going to have to hope that staff will adopt the new technology when it is reinstated. And sometimes the project's abandoned, and I have heard stories of millions of dollars being wasted on abandoned software implementations, things like that. And then good old AI, machine learning and automation. So, again, it's got to be cleansed and prepared beforehand. AI is learning from these training data sets. If they're wrong, you're only spreading more wrongness. It's no good. And even if it's like coding and you're taking it from bad, dirty, unclean data, you're just spreading that incorrectness throughout the new data set. So that can again have consequences far-reaching. And it's like they say, it's a good old adage of rubbish in and rubbish out. So, that's me told you how terrible it is, what the consequences are. But actually, what can we do about it? How can we ensure or try to ensure that we can make it better? And I would never say that you could get data 100% accurate. That's just a myth. So things that we can do. Well, first of all, there is no magic button that you can press or a quick fix or any software in the world that's going to solve your problems. You're always going to need some human intervention, hopefully or preferably with someone who has knowledge of that specific area of data that they're working with. And get the whole organization involved. So it's not just, as data professionals, our responsibility to maintain and clean that data. A lot of these errors happen at the point of entry, and it's but a lot of the time by people who are not data professionals. It's the receptionist or it's the sales and marketing team who are entering bad, incorrect information into the supplier database. So it's getting them involved, getting them to understand the consequences of what happens when they don't put that information in correctly. So, you put the wrong name or address into the database, and then a mailing goes out where you've just wasted money mailing something to someone that doesn't exist or doesn't live there. If it's something like you're inputting new products and you're putting in the weights, the measurements, the product code, if you get that wrong, things might not fit on a pallet on a truck, or things might get ordered too much, many things might get ordered or not enough. So by telling people what the consequences of and how it would affect their colleagues and possibly their friends and how many hours they might spend having to fix it, it gives them probably more of a sense of responsibility and involvement. So it's really important to get everyone involved. And again, it's those common standards, processes and terms. So how are we going to call everything? Is it data or is it data? What are we going to call it? That one is not such a big deal in actual data itself, but, liters or LTRs, get all those things defined and it will save so many problems down the road. And it's not just enough to fix that data, you have to maintain it, because guess what? Cut and paste errors happen, accidental deletions, someone's got an opinion who thinks it should be something else. You have to check it regularly to make sure that it's still as good as it was. And spot check as well. So, update new data that comes in, but also spot check the existing data. And there's a way that I can help you try and ensure that data accuracy. And I say to you, make sure that your data has its coat on. So first of all, your data has to be consistent. So that is, you know, those standards, terms, processes. Make sure everybody is working to the same standards. And then it has to be organized. So it's a bit like a messy wardrobe. You know, your favorite top is in there, but you just threw it in. So you know it's in there, but it's going to take you a while to find it. If you had neatly organized your wardrobe by color, by style, etc., then you could just go in and pull it out. Data is very much the same. So, you know, can you organize it by country? Can you organize it by department, by business unit, by region? There are a number of different ways that you can start to dice up that data. But you have to have the information in there to be able to do that. And then it has to be accurate. And, you know, that means different things to different people in different organizations. But I mean, ultimately, it has to be correct, or at least fit for purpose. And then once you have those three things, you have trustworthy data. So that means you can make those decisions with confidence, or you can, you know, send that report to your manager and know that it's right and you're not going to be challenged on it. Or you've run a machine learning tool and something's come out and you're going to feel confident that the output is correct. So make sure you get that quote on your data. And so making sure that quote's on there, you need to keep it on there as well. So, and I was talking about maintenance before as well. So I'm going to show you quickly how to spot check your data. So this is literally in Excel. I'm just going to say now, this is by no means the easiest or best option. But when I do this talk, you know, not everyone is using the same tools. Not everyone is even using any tools. So you can take this methodology and apply it to whatever you're doing. But this is some classified data. So the first thing I would do is take the name and the levels of classification. If it was product information, you might want the product code and the description, so you could have a look at those. And then you want to change that view to tabular form so that you can read it properly, make it nice and clean and tidy, remove your subtotals. And then from there, when you're scrolling down, as you can see in this example, there's transportation classification and some public utilities. So it might not be the right classification. So it can then lead you to look into the raw data and make sure that it's correct. And of course, it's a faff having to click between two different tabs. So there's a way around that as well. I'm sure you probably know this already. You know, click on a new window, you want to arrange all the views, and then you want to have them, well, it depends on what data you're looking at, but in this case, vertically. And then I can have my two tabs side by side, my pivot table in one, my raw data in the other. And I can start to scroll down my suppliers and look for anything that's not right. When I find it, I can then go into the raw data. I can change it. And then I can go and refresh the data in the pivot tab once it's been changed, so that when I'm scrolling down the information, I'm not continually looking at the same wrong data over and over. And, you know, we are talking about Excel here, so it's never going to be that easy when you are talking about dealing with massive volumes of data. So if you have massive volumes, try and chop it up either by supplier and maybe by product code, by country, by division, you know, all those things I was talking about in quotes. And you do exactly the same thing. And it just means that those things that are not quite right will stand out a lot quicker. So Breaks here in the UK is a food service company. So they should be doing catering services. There shouldn't be any transportation and mail storage services being classified against the supplier. I can then go and change it. And the data is going to be nice and clean for at least a moment in time. So that is my whistle-stop tour of what is dirty data. I hope that some of that has resonated with you, maybe giving you some ideas on how you might look at your data. Just going to tell you again that, you know, accurate data is critical and there are no shortcuts. You can't automate a lot of this. You know, you do need an eye on it. Know your data. And how are you going to know your data? Well, by maintaining it and looking at it regularly, you're going to start to spot when things don't look right. So you'll see patterns and trends and, you know, even things like values, you know, like every other code has got like a $100 value assigned against it and one has a $5,000 value. You know, things like that will start to jump out at you if you're really familiar with the data. And as I say, you know, things change, you know, people do accidentally cut, paste, delete things. So, you know, it's good to make sure that that is not going to be carried on. And of course, it makes your life easier. And who does not want that? But of course, the most important thing is to make sure that your data has its coat on. So if you still need a little reminder about what that is and what it does, here you go.
Are you leaving your data out in the cold? You wouldn't go out into sub-zero temperatures without the correct protection. So why do so many companies forget to protect their data? Unprotected data can lead to bad business decisions that cost money and put jobs at risk. That's why your data needs its coat on. This means making sure your data is consistent, organized, accurate, and trustworthy. Consistent means using the same standards, terms, and classifications company-wide. Organized data makes it easier to find. Think of it like a messy closet. It can be difficult to find what you're after, even when you know it's in there. When organized correctly, it becomes easier to find what we want. Data should be accurate, which can mean different things to different people, but at its most basic level, accurate data is correct. And finally, data should be trustworthy. This is critical. If your team can't trust the data, they might not use it. And business decisions around jobs, staffing, and budgets are all based on data, so it's got to be right. Like any code, there are differences in the quality of data services out there. If you buy a cheap coat, it might not be waterproof or protect you enough, and it won't last more than one season. If you don't invest in good quality data services, you will end up paying twice as much, if not more in the long run, to fix the earlier mistakes. If you'd like to speak to an expert about data in your own business, visit theclassificationguru.com to find out more.
And that is me. I hope you've enjoyed it. Here are all the different places you can find me. Please connect with me, follow me. More than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Right now,
Fantastic.
let me stop my share. And of course, Harmy already has her coat on. So, you know, she's already my little model for the day.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was fantastic. And I think there's a lot of really valuable stuff we can all relate to in there. I think the duplicates one stands out for me. Recently got an insurance quote or an insurance renewal, and it was a lot more expensive. But I found if I go back to the vendor's website and I sign up again and get a new policy, it was about $500 cheaper because I'm a new customer and I get a new customer discount. Which was good for me, but it's not so good for them. I don't think.
That's bad. I just changed from a sole trader to a limited company. So when you set up on Company's House, you suddenly get bombarded with all these accountants and things wanting to sell their services to you. And I got something through, and it was my name, not my business, but my address. And actually it was my first name, but not my surname. It was someone else's surname, their business, and then my address. So somebody has obviously shifted the database at some point.
And mismatched some data.
Not put filters on all the different columns or something. So yeah. So all that money wasted on a whole campaign, you know, they're accountants. It doesn't look good for them that they're sending out bad information.
Yep. I think there's a lot of stories, even, and I'm sure all of the people that are here today have probably got good examples of places where they've seen issues because of data quality stuff. So that was great. Thank you very much for sharing that. And we'll make sure
I was literally slurring my words. I was like, wow, I am tired. Like, and you don't, you think you'll be fine. And I'm like, I'm not in control of my own body right now. So apologies for that. But yeah, hopefully it still made lots of sense.
No, that's fine. It seemed to come through fine for me and stuff, which was great. So we'll share all of Susan's details and stuff on the Meetup page. We'll make